Hi guys! Today I want to make a video for you that I wish I had have watched when I first started drawing with colour pencils. I'm going to show you my 8 top tips, and had I have followed these back when I first started drawing, I would have saved myself a lot of time, money, and I would have been a lot better, a lot faster. So let's get straight into point number 1. First up, let's talk about the actual colour pencils, and I wish I had have known that they are very different to each other. Not all colour pencils are exactly the same. I didn't know that there were 2 different groups of colour pencils. There's wax-based and oil-based. Wax-based are a much softer lead, therefore you can build up colour a lot faster and they feel much smoother and much creamier. Whereas oil-based pencils have a much harder lead, which means not only can you build up the colour more gradually, but it's much easier for doing very fine detail. I tell you what I did. I went to a local craft shop when I was looking to buy colour pencils. They had some colour pencils. I picked one up, gave a little scribble on a tester sheet they had there, thought that one was fine, bought a load of colours and took them home. So happened that I really lucked out and they were polychromos and good pencils, but you shouldn't do that. You should research first depending on what you want to use them for. Now, I'm not going to spend the whole of this video talking about which colour pencils you should buy. If you haven't bought colour pencils yet, I do recommend watching another one of my videos where I go through in depth and compare 3 of the top brands. I'll pop a link in the description for that. What I will say though is that artist pencils can be pricey, so if you're working to a limited budget, you're better off spending out on paper rather than pencils. Which leads me nicely into point number 2. You can make a better drawing by using Crayola pencils on the right paper than you can by using the most expensive pencils on the wrong paper. But what do I mean by right and wrong? If you have too little tooth, then there won't be enough pigment that's able to stick to the paper, and you'll end up with little gaps. You won't get any vibrancy of colour, you won't be able to layer up the colour. If you have too much tooth, you'll either spend all day trying to build up the colour and you'll forever have little white holes where the tooth of the paper is. It will just be way harder than it needs to be, and drawing is supposed to be relaxing. So which paper would I recommend? If you're just doing a colour pencil on its own drawing, I'm always going to suggest Bristol board. It's a good all-rounder. You're able to get a decent amount of pigment down on the paper, so you're able to have nice vibrant colours. But it's also really easy to work with because it is so nice and smooth. It's almost so thick it feels like card. There are times when other papers are more suitable to the thing you're drawing, but I wish I had have known that buying the right paper would result in a better drawing and that I shouldn't use sketch paper or printer paper. Alright, into point 3, and I wish I had have realised sooner how important an accurate sketch is. I spent so much time trying to learn all sorts of different techniques for coloured pencils, and had I have spent the time earlier making sure I had an accurate sketch, I would have been a better artist sooner. There's a few different ways that you can create an accurate sketch. You could use the grid method, where you draw a grid on the piece of paper you're drawing from and on your reference photo, and rather than trying to draw the whole picture, you just draw what's in each individual square. Or you could plot out major points by measuring and then join them together that way. But the point is that you create an accurate sketch. It's never going to create a realistic colour pencil drawing if you've got one eye much bigger than the other and the nose is far too small. So try a few different sketching methods, find the one that works best for you and practice. For number 4, I'm going to talk about picking colours, and I wish I had have swatched out all of my colours from day 1. Colour pencils often come with a little printed swatch of colours. I don't mean using that. I mean drawing your own swatches on a sheet of paper, the same kind of paper that you will later be using for your drawing. It is the most accurate way to know what your colours will look like when they're down on the paper. So don't look at the pencil casing to know the colour or look at the lead. You want to look at the swatches that you've made, and it will make your life so much easier. The other thing when it comes to colour picking is don't worry about it so much. If your colours are a tiny bit different to the actual reference, it won't matter. You're not trying to make an actual photo, you're trying to make a drawing and a piece of art. As long as you're pretty similar, you should be okay. Nevertheless, you can slightly adjust the colour through layering, but we'll talk about that shortly. Before we get onto that, let's talk about point number 5, which is a sharp pencil. I used to let my pencils get so blunt, way too blunt, and not only did it make it far harder and made drawing feel a little bit stressful, but I wasn't able to be as accurate with the pencil, it wasn't able to go down as smoothly, it was just generally making my life way harder than it needed to be. And once it's sharp, keep it sharp. Don't think that you can sharpen it at the beginning of the drawing and it'll stay that sharp throughout. You have to keep doing it throughout. I invested in the Swordfish pencil sharpener because it not only makes the pencils really nice and sharp, but you can also change the blade out on it so it doesn't cost as much when it gets blunt. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Swordfish pencil sharpener. Any sharpener that can get your pencils nice and sharp is worth having. All right, let's talk about layering. A lot of people, when they first get colour pencils, just go in full force and completely flatten the texture of the paper, meaning that they can only put down that one colour, they can't put any more colours down. What you want to do is put down the pencil gently and build it up slowly. And although I did know that, there is so much more you can do with layering. You can use layering to blend from one colour to another. You can also use layering to adjust a colour. If you've got a brown down and it's not quite as red, you think it should have a little bit more red in it, you can layer a tiny bit of red on top to just adjust that brown. You can also use layering to create texture. Now obviously you can't create physical texture through layering, but you can create the illusion of texture. First up, if you're wanting to create something very, very smooth, you could use little circular motions to make your layers very smooth. But if you were drawing something like fur, you could use a series of different pencils, different colour pencils in flicking motions, and that would build up to create a fluffy looking fur. Similar theories work for skin, hair, feathers, whatever it is you're drawing, it helps to build it up through layers. I also find by working with layers, it is far more forgiving. If you start with the lighter colours and work your way up to the darker, if you make any mistakes with the lighter colours, then it's easier to correct with darker as you go and sort of adjust it. Whereas if you go in full force with a darker colour, you are very much committing to what you're drawing. And this brings me nicely into the last thing I wish I knew, which is recognizing when I'm finished and recognizing when I'm not. I think particularly when I first started, I would draw a certain amount, kind of feel like there's colour pencil over the whole area and think, right, that's me done, when really I hadn't got my contrast high enough, I hadn't gone to the darkest colours I should have, and I just didn't build up that texture and those layers enough. I then think I went too far the other way and overworked my pieces way too much. I just didn't know when to stop and ended up spending hours more on a piece than I should have, when after a few hours it didn't really look any different. Knowing when it's time to stop does come from experience, but I do think being aware that you might be stopping at the wrong time is half the battle, and I wish I had have known that. Alright, those are my tips that I wish I could go back and tell myself to improve my colour pencil drawing. What would you go back and tell yourself? Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you found this video helpful, give it a like and don't forget to click the subscribe and the notify bell so you never miss an art tutorial. Happy drawing guys, I'll see you in the next one.